So welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and I know I said I was going to do a Siege of the Grey Havens next. However, there has been a slight change in the plan because I am going to be fiddling around with the schedule again, and it has come to my attention that I do get quite a lot of 1v1 or 2v2 style battles that I honestly don't get to show because most of the time I also get sent those larger scale set piece ones which people more often want to see over the sort of 1v1s which maybe are a little bit quicker and a little bit more tactical, for example. However, I do have a thought on that, and that is that I'm going to start bulk recording stuff on Wednesdays and one of the days at the weekend, and I will be doing essentially what it's going to be is this will be a little bit different because this one will be on its own and there will be a day's gap between when this one releases and the previous and the one in the future. However, what I'm going to be doing from this point on is I'm going to be doing like a 1v1 and a 2v2 on one day, and then the next day I will be doing a larger set piece scale battle, and then there will be a day's gap before the cycle starts again. So essentially there won't be anything lost by doing this, and this will actually increase the number of videos that I do per week as a direct result. And also the best thing is, if people do send me a 1v1 or a 2v2, I'm sure that a lot of people who have sent me them are wondering where their battles are, but now I will actually be able to show them with some regularity. So with that out of the way, we'll get to one that I've had for a couple of weeks now on the back burner, and it's going to be Dreezy of the Dark Cloud, who is playing as Imladris, and this is going to be in a similar vein to that Imladris army that he used in a free-for-all about a couple of weeks ago, which was very popular, I'll say, because it consists basically entirely of Imladris' elite units, so it's a very small army, but very, very elite, and it goes to show that the elves certainly can go for a fully quantity approach while it being viable. We'll see how he gets on this time. Across the way we can see that Dio is playing as Dol Amroth, which interestingly enough was his first opponent last time, so we'll see if Dio can do a better job than the poor player that he rolled over in the last game. So he's got some Eldoranway Haru Myro out on the flank, and over on the other side he has got the Gwathi Rockdor, so we'll talk about the cavalry first. One thing that I always expect from Imladris most of the time is the fact that they will be bringing some form of very powerful cavalry, whether that's obviously their elven skill bows on horseback, or whether they bring their knights and their very powerful lancers. Either way, it's going to be a real challenge to deal with Imladris' cavalry normally. Obviously, only 2 units of them, and against Dol Amroth they do have the melee cav to deal with that, so we'll see how well Dreezy can use his limited cav resources in this fight. On the front line, obviously the Eldoranway Haru Hatal, like with most spearmen, they do have that malice against infantry, which does make them a little bit less effective. However, overall, because they are such high tier, they do get around this, and they will still beat a lot of standard infantry one-to-one pretty easily for the most part, thanks to their very high melee skill. And then in the middle we have some Gwathi Arthand. I think that's 2 units of them. Certainly looks like it. Either way, obviously multiple HP spears, even stronger individually than the Eldoranway. Obviously there are only 83 of them per unit, but very, very difficult to punch your way through. Obviously the low unit count is really the only thing which lets them down. And then just in behind, it looks like we've got 2 units again of the Eldoranway Haru Masil, which again, going over the red limit there to get 2 units of these guys. They are, I think, I'm right in saying this, that currently they are the strongest single HP Swordmaster unit in the game. So they will be able to mop up a lot of basic units very, very quickly thanks to their high skill, but the fact that they aren't multiple HP means they are vulnerable both to sustained arrow fire and of course to cavalry charges. And out on the flank we've got 2 units of the Imladris Guardians. I think we go over here, there's another unit of them. Indeed there are, and they do have the armour upgrade as well, so yet again, quality being invested in here quite heavily. And obviously the Imladris Guardians, as far as line infantry goes, they are one of the finest examples in the game, especially with their armour upgrade. They might even be the best, depending on how you quantify that. And then obviously 2 units of Eldoranway Haru Quinga in addition to that, obviously very, very strong archers. My hatred for the Eldoranway archers is long gone since they've become a reasonable member of the Reforged unit community. And obviously in terms of one-to-one they will do very, very well. There is the danger of course they could be overwhelmed by sheer volume, especially from a faction like Dol Amroth, whose archers can be pretty hardy even at the base level. But obviously in terms of quality, the Haru Quinga are just here to accent the very high tier army that he's brought. Meanwhile, let's go and have a look at Dio's Dol Amroth army, and indeed he does have the Doran Ernil archers at the front with the armour upgrade. A couple of units of them it looks like. Again, only 2 units of them does mean that the elves should hold a ranged advantage unless there are some rangers hidden back here. Obviously the Nimrodel rangers and the Blackroot Vale archers would significantly affect the skirmish fight with that body piercing, and it would also inflict casualties that the elves could ill afford. We'll see that if Dio has indeed brought that. And then we've got 2 units here, the Ethelon's Man at Arms and the Doran Ernil Pikemen, both again with the armour upgrade, so trying to make themselves as survivable as possible. Although I still say with even with the armour upgrade, especially the Edelon men arms, I should say, will really struggle against the Elven front line. The pikes might make the difference, but as we saw last time, the pikes didn't really help. So we'll see if, it's all about how you use them, I suppose. So we'll see if Dio is able to capitalise on his reach. He's got some Tarnostian Guard out on the flank, supporting his cavalry on both sides. And obviously, the primary purpose of this is to guard the flanks from the cavalry, but it is also worth saying that they don't have the highest attack values, and unlike the Gondorians, they don't have bonuses to spear, so the Tarnostian Guard will be very ill-suited to fighting the Elven infantry in melee. Then over here we have not the General's Bodyguard, interestingly enough, the Haven Knights. So obviously they're going to be used in a freer role. I think the Elven horses should be faster than the Haven Knights, all things considered. But if the Haven Knights get any one of the Imladris cavalry units on the field today in melee, the Haven Knights should do very well. In general, the Haven Knights are one of the strongest melee cav units in the game. That's super tier melee cavalry, which is more akin to Knights. And indeed, back here we do have Imrahil in the Haven Guard. The Haven Guard, of course, will be an exception in the Dol Amroth roster. They will be able to go toe-to-toe with the Elven units that are arrayed before them, and their presence on the front line is going to be very necessary, I think. It's going to be the Haven Guard and also the cavalry for Dol Amroth, which is going to have to do the heavy lifting here. And then back here we've got a couple of units of Tarnostian Lancers. They need to steer clear of the Elven cavalry, but they can do some nasty charges. Obviously, charges that connect well are going to be the bane of this Imladris army, because they don't have the men to really lose to a large scale charge like that. And obviously some Swan Knights, which are melee cavalry. I'm not sure how they do against the Gwathi Rockdor, but they should beat the Heru Myro, considering their Lancers. But without further ado, let us begin. So, interestingly enough, I would actually suggest that the skirmish fight should belong to the Elves here, provided they utilise their men well. Unless there is indeed Rangers hidden off on one of the flanks, which is a possibility, and indeed we do see the Nimrodel Rangers as they immediately reveal themselves, and obviously the body piercing could be extremely useful. And actually, it's the Elves that are going to be aggressive here. I think they sense the fact that Dol Amroth with those Rangers probably going to have the skirmish advantage, and they can't really afford to sit back and lose too many unit models. Obviously, otherwise this fight is not going to go very well for them. They need to get into melee and start utilising their skill. The Elves in general can be a real handful once they get into melee. The cavalry here for Dol Amroth is going to be absolutely key, and that's going to be what decides the fight really. The Swan Knights are heading out. The Haven Knights are still static, but the Elder Enway are menacing with intent, and actually this is going to be the first engagement. So the Gwathi Rockdor actually charging in to the Swan Knights, and with a charge, the Gwathi Rockdor could have a decent impact there, and they didn't lose any unit models, and now the Swan Knights are under arrow fire as well, so the Elven Cav is actually going to be trying to screen for the Elder Enway as they continue to fire in on the Dol Amroth lines. The Doran Ernal actually did not retreat in time before the Elves crashed into their lines. The Tarnostian Lancers are going to charge forward and try and deal with the Imladris Guardians, and that was not a bad charge, honestly. They were up to charge speed. But the real strength of this army, of course, is the fact that all of the Elven units are of such high quality that it might look like a really hopeless fight, but as time wears on, a lot of these Dol Amroth infantrymen are going to fall away. I would worry about the Hammer and Anvil though. The Haven Knights are going to be coming in, and they're going to be getting a nice rear charge here into the Imladris Guardians, and of course the Elder Enway Heru Hatal would be able to turn around with their spears and get some nice anti-cavalry damage into these horses. But as it is, the Imladris Guardians, probably not so much. Very nasty Hammer and Anvil as well with the pikes in front, but here in the middle, the Elder Enway Heru Masil are really the best target for the cavalry to be going after. It's a shame that they are right next to the Heru Hatal, because the Heru Masil will make very quick work of all of this Dol Amroth infantry, other than the Haven Guard, which are in the middle. Let's see how these Tarnostian Lancers are getting on. They're still pretty healthy, honestly, but they haven't really had a huge impact over here as yet. They're going to try and charge back in, but that charge was a little bit more weak sauce than the one that preceded it, and now the Tarnostian Lancers, unfortunately for them, are getting mixed up in a fight they have no business being in, because the Gwathi Rockdor are going to charge forward. And obviously the Gwathi Rockdor, as genuine knights, have that anti-cavalry bonus as well. While arrows coming in here from the Nimrodel Rangers, going into their own, well, going along the Elven line. Also, I can't imagine thinking that the body piercing is probably going to hit some of their own men as well. Now this is where the Elven Cavalry can really bring down its full effectiveness. The Heru Myro, which are one of the highest charge, well, I think they are the joint, well, they have a charge bonus of 20 is what I'm trying to say. They need to get out of there quickly, otherwise those pikes are going to do a lot of damage. But that has caused a lot of disarray here, shall we say, in the middle of the Dol Amroth line. But the Heru Myro also certainly paid for that. The pikes were able to get some casualties off on them. Meanwhile, Tarnostian Lancers is shaken. Those Gwathi Rockdor are really starting to charge them into the ground. Hard to tell how the Haru Quinga have been doing. Well, not over here, because we can see that they have in fact been charged by the Haven Knights. Actually, this might end up being a little bit of a mistake. The Haven Knights are sorely needed to shut down the Imladris cavalry. If the Imladris cavalry is dead, their army doesn't really have a chance against the Dol Amroth Lancers. But as it is, bit of a break from that, yeah. Bit of a break for Imladris, that, because the Haven Knights were not on station. And it's interesting how the Tarnostian Lancers were the ones to go after the Knights when it really should have been the Haven Knights. They would have been the ones, they could have beaten the Gwathi Rockdor with that huge anti-cav bonus they have. Those Doranurno archers are coming back from the backfield there. The Haru Myra have taken a lot of damage to the pikes, and this is obviously the advantage of Dol Amroth bringing so many pikes on the front line. Not only will it keep the elite elven infantry at bay for longer with that reach, but it will also ensure that even when they do get a nice rear charge, the elven cavalry still takes damage for it. Meanwhile, the Gwathi Rockdor starting to get bogged down in all of these spears and lancers, and now finally we can also see that the Haven Knights have also started to target in on them. They are taking some rear shots over there from the Eldarenwe Haru Quinga back there. But we're starting to see now big blobs of Tarnostian Guard. Over here, actually, Dol Amroth are going to win. The Imladris Guardians, the rear charges they took, too much for them to bear. But in the middle, the Eldarenwe Haru Hatal and Haru Masil are carving their way through the Dol Amroth front line slowly and surely. There's a lot of action going on here, but there's still quite a long way to go in this fight. It's the Tarnostian Lancers, they're doing the right thing by trying to rear charge and deprive the High Elves of some of their nastier units. The Haru Masil in particular are so deadly in a sustained melee, but they are vulnerable. If you can hit them with a cav charge, a lack of HP means they will die on the first charge rather than somewhat tanking the first charge effectively. Let's go back up to 1 speed as this fight continues, as the Eldarenwe, really the Athlon men-at-arms, are not really having too much of an impact on the front line. Dol Amroth may still end up winning the front line, but that will be on the back of the pikes more so than the infantry. And you can actually see over here that the Athlon men-at-arms trying to countercharge. The pikes now also turn around. The Haru Myro don't have much legs left in them. You can see now that this might actually be the end of them. So many of them getting caught.
They have lost half their men.
Only 5 of them remaining actually, but all of these sort of ancillary Tarnostian Guard might end up being the saviours here. Imladris are ahead by 2 percentage points, but again, the overall numbers discrepancy could come back to bite them here. We'll see. Dio's army has stood up well to the quality extreme Imladris force here. Haven Knights, meanwhile, only 6 of them remaining, interestingly enough. They have been focused down almost entirely by the Eldarenwe Haru Quinga, and that will open the way for the Gwathi Rockdor to do some damage, because there's really nothing else on the field today that can match them. The Swan Knights are all dead after the initial engagements with the Imladris cavalry. They would have been much better served going after the Haru Myro. And the Haru Hatal's presence on the front line will now come into play more and more as the very damaged Dol Amroth cavalry will start to take more damage from the spears from Imladris. Meanwhile, these Gwathi Rockdor are going to try and finish off what remains of the High Elven cavalry. Interestingly enough, the Haru Quinga might come into play as the battle goes on as well, simply because they're not half bad in melee either. Provided they can get some nice damage off, they may very well come out of this on top. Haru Hatal sort of heading away from the front line. It's fair to say that Dol Amroth has won the front line engagement, but the battle is still going on. I would still, again, I've seen this army in action before, so I know better than to underestimate it, but Dol Amroth, you would think, would have the advantage at this point. The wild card, however, will be that Gwathi Rockdor, which is really the only cavalry unit left on the field. Whether they can use that or not, if Dio is able to use what's left of his pikes and his spears to cover his army, you would imagine that the Gwathi Rockdor should be okay as they charge into the Nimrodel ranges and try and shut down those body-piercing projectiles. There are still some Tarnostian Lancers, but very few of them. And again, 6 Lancers could be just what Dol Amroth need to ensure victory here. Another nice charge into what remains of the Imladris infantry could be just the ticket. Pikes continuing to move forward. Doranurno pikemen have managed to prop up this Dol Amroth army in a way that we didn't see last time we saw this particular Imladris composition in action. Those Gwathi Rockdor thinking best of charging last samurai style into the Doranurno archers. Now the Nimrodel range is taking another charge, and that one was nasty. The unit concertinaing there. into the Imladris Knights. The Harryquinga being committed to melee. I don't know whether there's going to be enough of them, however. They are somewhat spread out. Unless they're just here to keep these units occupied while the other unit of Harryquinga goes to support what very little remains of the initial Imladris infantry force. We'll see. There will certainly be a match for the Tarnostian Guard in a sustained fight, but there's still some Gwathi Arthan left alive. That goes to show how strong they are. Still 30 of them that were sort of duking it out here in the middle with all of those Dol Amroth infantrymen and pikemen. Yeah, if Dreezy's going to win this at this point, he's going to need to use his knights really well. Although having said that, over here, this pocket of Dol Amroth resistance is not going too well, so this fight over here will slowly but surely go in Imladris' favour, whereas this one over here will certainly go in favour of Dol Amroth. Dreezy needs to be careful. This Gwathi Rockdor could win him the match, or if he charges it into the pikes, he could throw it away. Defeat is almost a certainty. Is the infantry trying to countercharge there? I'm not sure whether they're going to have the most success here, purely because of all these pikes. Dol Amroth going heavy on the pikes may very well have been a very smart move indeed. Those Nimrodel Rangers not doing too well at this point. And there are now only 5 Gwathi Rockdors, so it goes to show that even when they're knights, the pikes anti-cavalry bonus is still extremely significant. Interestingly enough though, we've only really just ticked over the halfway point in this battle, so there is still a long way to go, despite the fact we are now looking at a situation with less than 20% of each army, but Dol Amroth have pulled ahead. Can Imladris somehow pull this back? Harryquinga doing their best, but what's left of the Haven Guard are still over here, and I'm not sure, but they may very well have been the single strongest infantry unit on the field today. I mean, the Gwathi Arthan are spears, so they have a somewhat different priority. Dor and Ernil pikemen marching forward in formation, trying to counter-surround Imladris. That, you would imagine, is going to... well, it certainly has interrupted the Dor and Ernil archers, but it hasn't killed them. I mean, 5 knights is still a real problem for Dol Amroth to deal with, but it's not as unmanageable as the 18 it was not too long ago. Pikes continuing. That's a unit of Ethelon's men-at-arms, which is a juicy target for them. Obviously no anti-cavalry bonus, so they can charge in and be reasonably sure that they're going to come out of it alive. Again, these pikes proving to be a real problem here for Imladris. It's not easy to hammer and anvil pikes. You can do it and you will still do a lot of damage, but as soon as they turn around, your cavalry unit is going to be in real trouble. Here you can see the pikes. Just about the Gwathi Rockdor were able to get away. Well, these Eldarenwe Harryquinga still fighting hard over here. There's only 16 of them remaining, but still doing some nice damage to this Tarnostian Guard, and the low attack values of the Tarnostian Guard obviously playing a big part in that. I think their attack value is only 3, and then if you put the infantry malice on top of that, killing off infantry takes a long time for them, and that's actually a rout there, which is the last thing Dol Amroth really wanted. All of the engagement over here for all of this Imladris infantry is now... all of this Imladris infantry is now freed up. The Gwathi Rockdor continuing to try and shut down the one arch unit on the field that still has ammunition. With cycle charging they should be able to do it. Now this is going to be very, very interesting, because now the strength of the Haven Guard are really going to have to prop up Dol Amroth, and there's only 24 of them remaining, because now Imladris has the advantage of being able to choose different targets. Oh, and the Eldarenwe Harryquinga have still got ammunition. That is something I did not realise. So now, firing squad style, they are going to fire right in here with their fire ammunition as well. This could be sufficient to rout them. The Tarnostian Guard already shaken. They're very tired, so that's close to exhausted. Tarnostian Guard are going to try and close the gap. They do have a shield value, it's worth saying. Oh, and that was a clutch play there. This one Tarnostian Lancer interrupting the Eldarenwe Harryquinga from getting that volley off. Now, this isn't really the worst situation for Imladris. They would have preferred to soften up the Tarnostian Guard a little bit more, but the Eldarenwe Harryquinga should still be able to defeat them in melee, and there's still the matter of these knights which could cycle charge spears with less fear than the pikes. Meanwhile, this Heru Hatal over here still, it looks as though Dol Amroth are going to win. Only 12 Haven Guard at this point. The Gwathi Rokdo actually charging into the pikes. And there goes the Imladris General.
Perhaps our chances of victory with it.
That was risky. Can't help but feel as though those Tarnostian Guard would have been the softer target though.
Like this, we will smash the enemy.
And yeah, Imladris have just about pulled ahead, which could well mean that Imladris are just about to pull this out. I don't think there's enough Haven Guard left, and indeed, you know, they've surely used up all of their hit points at this point, which means the Elves will be fighting them on a more even playing field, although admittedly they don't have any of their Heru Masil left, so they're just going to have to try and wear them down. Dol Amroth, however, from the backfield with 20 archers that do still have ammo. But the Joker in the pack here, there's still those Gwathi Rokdo running around. Impressive showing from them. Only one of them remaining. There's Imrahil, right out in front. Only 9 Haven Guard left. That 9 Haven Guard could be just what they need though. They've also still got archers, although saying that, the Tarnostian Guard just routed, which means the Heru Quinga are going to get some shots off. Yeah, with those shots you would imagine that when the Haven Guard get isolated, although still Doran Ernil archers. And now it's time to kite. It's that time. The Heru Quinga are going to try and kite. Gwathi Rokdo. At this point he should probably just leave it in melee, to be honest with you, prevent it from firing. Certainly already paid for itself, and it'll be more important, to be honest, to ensure that the Heru Quinga does not get skirmished from a distance. The Haven Guard are out in front. Will they be able to get a volley off? They should. They will, right into the front of these Haven Guard, and that's could be enough to finish them. Several more of them falling. I don't know how much ammunition this Heru Quinga still has left, but at this point I think it's safe to say that Imladris... I don't know. These Doran Ernil archers have managed to fight off the last Imladris knight, which means they are free to skirmish. Wild. Decent frontal shot there, but not many of them falling, and that could be the amount of ammunition. They've been firing for some time after all, but I would still back them in this fight now. There simply aren't enough Haven Guard left, only 4. And Heru Quinga, as said previously, very, very good in melee as well. And there is another High Helmet Spearman there. 1 Heru Hatal. So it really is going to, you know, Dol Amroth's hopes and dreams pinned on the Doran Ernil archers. Unit of 3 Heru Quinga. Yeah, I think Imladris should be fine. I don't think the Doran Ernil archers are going to be able to kill this many men before they get engaged in melee. And obviously, while the elven skirmishers of this quality are very, very good in a melee fight, Dol Amroth's archers aren't bad, I suppose, especially when you've got the armor upgrade on them. Makes them a little bit tankier, but ultimately it's not in the same league as the elves. I think this is going to come to an end fairly soon. Imrahil's still fighting away, however. I say that and then he dies.
Without him, his troops will lose their will to fight.
Now then. Doran Ernil archers sort of indiscriminately firing. You can see the difference in accuracy here. A lot of the Doran Ernil archers' shots missing their mark, whereas the elven ones obviously very much landing. Obviously you get for what you pay for, and the Heru Quinga do not come cheap, especially not 2 of them. Once again here, we're about to see this very unorthodox Imladris army. It's something that I wouldn't really have considered working, considering how effective armies built around their numbers can be. But obviously, in terms of the elves, I was wrong, and Dreezy's, it's a very interesting composition to try and fight. I mean, we've seen it best Dol Amroth twice now, but it would be interesting to note, I do still think that cavalry is its ultimate Achilles heel, because, you know, with all of the money spending, those 2 units of cavalry are very strong. And I do feel as though Dol Amroth actually had the tools to deal with that. I feel as though if the Haven Knights went after the Gwathi Rokdo earlier and deprived Imladris of their knights in the mid to late game, I think this probably would have gone to Dol Amroth if it had turned into a melee slugfest from beginning to end. And that would be the key, I think.
It could have been we that were slain and defeated on the field, but fate has been kind and delivered us victory.
Melee cav, I think, would be the way forward here, as well as a couple of units of Lancers, like Dol Amroth tried here. It's the sort of thing you could also do with Khan quite easily. Just sort of go for a lot of pole arms on the front line, and then go for some melee cav to pin the Imladris cavalry in place, and then if you hammer and anvil the Elven lines, eventually they'll just lose too many, because you can see here they've deployed under 1,000, and Dol Amroth just over 2,000. Is the sort of numbers you would expect to see going in favour of Dol Amroth normally, but obviously this time the kills speak for themselves. Just about, I guess, just under double. But let's have a look at the what actually did the damage from Imladris. Obviously, all of the units in this army composition have to get a lot of kills to make themselves worth it. But the Heru Quinga just coming out on top with 268, with the Gwathi Rokta also doing very well for themselves from beginning to end. They were involved. Imladris Guardians getting the least, but then they were the target for the Dol Amroth Lancers early on. I would have argued to go after the Heru Masil, regardless of the cost, because they are the genuine melee damage dealers in this army. Just a single unit of Gwathi Arthan, so it was just one. Hard to tell when you see all those officers around. But yeah, like I said, I feel as though Khan could do a good job at this. Obviously, with their melee cavalry, big focus on melee cavalry, they could hunt down the Imladris cav units, and then you could use a unit like Variag Cataphracts to do a lot of damage in the back lines. But Dol Amroth's army here also could have done the job. I think if the Haven Knights had done their thing, if the Swan Knights had instead gone after the Heru Myro instead of going after the Gwathi Rokta, they would have had a much happier time instead of being slaughtered so early. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will be doing more sort of this in addition to the larger set piece battles, provided I still am able to keep up a steady stream of actually getting them. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you join me for whatever is next, which is going to be another one of these. It will be, this one should be releasing on Tuesday, and the next one will be releasing on Thursday, a similar one to this, and then obviously I'll follow that up with a big set piece on Friday, and then it will be on a sort of a rolling, sort of with a day's gap in between. That's the idea anyway, so give me some feedback on that. It ultimately means the amount of content I'm going to be putting out will increase after all, so I doubt many people will mind that. So yeah, I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.